Hey, welcome everybody to our first episode of the Bunzel Sales Nation podcast. So you're probably all wondering why a podcast? Why is Pat doing this? Well, I want to be able to bring something different outside of the box thinking on how we conduct sales meetings and the input we have with other salespeople that are maybe not in our industry, maybe they are, but let them talk to, how we as salespeople can learn to separate ourselves from all our competitors. That's important because a lot of times we get locked into thinking it's all about one industry, where there are nuggets out there of information that can help us get through, especially this period of the pandemic. The new normal. What does that look like not only to our industry, but people outside our industry? So who better to help me kick off our first episode of the Bunzel Sales Nation podcast? Our guest was actually one of the co-founders of that tagline, Bunzel Sales Nation. Worked for Bunzel for about 5 years, and I'm proud to have him as one of our guests. So I'm going to just toss over to Guy and ask him, hey, Guy, how did that whole Bunzel Sales Nation terminology come to light for us?
Hey, Pat, great to connect with you. I know we had a couple beers over the holidays. It was great to see you then. But, it's funny, when I was thinking about the whole Bunzel Sales Nation, it reminds me of when we came up with the idea. It was after the Chicago sales managers meeting where there was all of the guys in the room, all the sales managers from around the nation. We had the top brass there from Bunzel sitting in the back corner of the room, all in their blue blazers. I remember that day. We were played some games, had a lot of fun. We had a great, I think it was 2.5 days in Chicago. And we came away from there, or I came away from there going, man, there's so much valuable knowledge and great people in that room with all those sales managers. I said, how can we keep these people connected? Because we're all going to go back to our own little universes and put our heads down and start grinding away and working away. And I said, man, there's got to be a way to keep everyone connected and keep the conversations going. And that's when I thought of the idea, why don't we host a meeting at least once a month or once a quarter of the Bunzel Sales Nation, all the sales managers coming together in one place and just having a regular meeting. And that's kind of where it started from.
Yeah, I remember how daunting it was for both of us to be on stage. Think about this for a second. Being on stage with over 125 of just our peers, our sales managers, not to talk about all the blue suits that were around that area too, all the head honchos. But it was something that I walked away with also, that I learned a lot. And I learned a lot from the people that participated in that launch of that sales meeting that we had on a national basis. What was a key takeaway for you when we came out of that?
The interesting thing was, it was funny because I remember that was the meeting that the new CEO or president of Bunzel International was brought onto the stage, and he actually flew in to talk at that meeting. I was like, I can't believe that they're asking Pat and myself to be at this meeting. I was like, wow, this is a lot. So it was pretty interesting to think about all of that was going on. I was relatively new to Bunzel, and having that opportunity. I think the biggest thing that I walked away from was the fact that, we're all out there doing our thing, but everyone truly had the same mindset of wanting to, grow their business, do better, continue to be a bigger part of Bunzel, from our own place. We're in Northern California. We had guys from Chicago. We had Tony from Maine. We had all these people from all over the place, but we all wanted to do better and grow. I think that was the main thing I came away from there, is everyone is like-minded and really wanted to do better.
Yeah, no, good point. And one of the takeaways I found out, and it was very apparent after, because we didn't know this was going to be successful. We thought, who's going to join these meetings? Everybody's busy. Nobody wants to hear us talk. But it was amazing how much of our peers wanted to join these meetings. So it told me that they were starving for information. They wanted to share a lot of information amongst each other. And it was very successful. And
No, I totally agree. And I do remember the fact that when we left that meeting, we came up with the idea, we threw it out there through an email, and everyone was like, yeah, that'd be fantastic. And then after, I think it was the first or the second one, we had multiple people say, hey, when are we doing that again? When are we doing that again? You know, can we talk about this? Can we talk about that? Because it really created a good platform just to open it up, and people could connect on different topics. So I thought that was really cool.
yeah, so talking about a platform for launch, this is interesting. It wasn't too long after that. You had been with Bunzl for about 5 years, but it was early on in your career at Bunzl that you just started taking off. You had a successful team over Bunzl Tracy. You had a great team of people to work with, and you were developing that team. But at some point in time, and I'm very interested in knowing that, you wanted to leave and pursue other dreams. Even at the, where you were growing to be successful, you were thinking down the road. Was it difficult for you to make that change into another field?
It really was. I mean, being a part of Bunzl is really becoming part of a family. I mean, it was interesting because it was right after the national sales meeting that we had in Texas that I had an opportunity come to me, and I was not looking for an opportunity. Like you said, our sales team was growing. We recently had some people retiring. Matt Myers and I, we were, hitting all of our goals. We had just moved into a new, bigger building, and out of nowhere, this opportunity comes to me, and like I said, it was not one that I was looking for, but I've always been of the mindset of if something comes and it's going to push me to grow and it's going to give me a better opportunity, then I'm willing to look at that. And it's kind of how I got to Bunzl in the first place. I wasn't necessarily looking for an opportunity, and then it came to me, and I stepped forward, looked into it, and ended up making the transition.
It's interesting that I always like to coin the phrase the lightning before the thunder. You made that change. You went on to a whole new world, a whole new industry, not knowing exactly where you were going to end up. And then the pandemic, that started to creep into all of our worlds. And I want to go back to your time at Bunzl before I go forward. What were some of the challenges that you felt you had as a sales manager at that time, as far as the selling portion of it?
For me, probably the bigger challenges where I was new to the industry. I'd been in sales and marketing and sales management my entire career, but coming into Bunzl, I had never sold the specific products that you guys sold or that we were selling at that time. I inherited a seasoned group of salespeople who didn't know me. And I had to, build that relationship with them so they could trust me, and I could, get into a position where I could ask more of them, and then we could get growing with them. So that was probably the two biggest challenges: is the industry and the fact that, had a seasoned group of sales guys that were, pretty set in how they were doing it. But we, in sales, it's all about, we got to continue to grow, we got to continue to mature and reach beyond what we're doing today. That's what, every company wants.
One of the things that we teach, I also train and teach corporately the sales program we have, Sales 101, I like to call it. And one of the things we try to stress to anybody, whether they've been in sales for 20 or 30 years, because we bring in people that were part of the acquisitions that Bunzl makes. So we have to retrain people just to get them into a new thought pattern, and even our newest people that we work with. But to your point, Guy, is that everything starts off with a relationship. And I think sometimes we as people, not only managers, but as sales associates, sales professionals, we miss the mark on that relationship. You said that you had to rebuild or build a relationship with your salespeople so they can gain trust, so they can gain your credibility, gain rapport with each other. How does that play into, or do you believe that's a big part of the way you sell and find customers, how to develop relationships?
Absolutely. I mean, I've always been a huge believer in relationships, right? I mean, you could have the world's greatest price, the world's greatest product, but if the person you're trying to talk to or sell to doesn't like you, then you don't have anything. You really don't. But if you have a relationship and you build on the foundation of that, then everything is going to grow from there. And we know in every relationship, in every sales process with every customer, there's going to be that moment where we fail to make a delivery, the product fails because the quality, and it's at that point is when the relationship is going to be tested, right? I mean, we've all had those calls and something's not working. And I remember back in the days of Bunzel when we had foam meat trays that were literally melting. They were in Hawaii for one of our customers, and the customer screaming, saying, "Hey, what's going on? What's wrong with your meat trays?" And it was with Greg Pantages and one of his clients. But we really had the rapport where we could say, okay, let's talk about this. Let's understand it more, right? So it didn't come down to price. It didn't come down to quality. It came down to the relationship. We dug in. We asked a bunch of questions and come to find out they're putting the foam meat trays on the back of open trucks, flatbeds, and driving them through 90-degree temperature weather. Well, of course they're going to melt because they're sitting out in the hot sun for hours at a time. And once we had that opportunity to connect with them and speak with them, then we were able to solve the problem. But if we didn't have that relationship, they could have fired us on the spot. So it's just, I think that's where it all starts, is the relationship.
Being in preferred position with a customer gives you a lot of credibility, gives you a lot of rapport with that customer. And that's some of the hardest parts to train anybody, is that starting on, that relationship, the bonding process with the customer, that if you have a strong relationship, it will help to diffuse. I like to say that when you have a strong relationship, you're building money, you're putting money in the bank with the customer. And when you have to withdraw, you had to screw up, a missed shipment, or you had an issue with customer service, they're going to forgive you a lot better because of the fact that you have built that great relationship with them. So it builds you some trust with the customer and credibility. I want to go forward into MSI. That's the company you're working for right now.
Correct.
And what did you learn from Bunzel that you took to MSI? Because they're different fields. Explain what the field you're doing now and how was it very similar? Maybe it was similar to what you were doing at Bunzel.
Sure. So MSI is a company in Northern California. We're part of a group called the Delta Print Group. So we're really a design, print, and mail company. So at the end of the day, we're a manufacturer of printed products that we sell to a wide array of industries, everything from government to healthcare. Probably the biggest thing that I learned from Bunzel moving into MSI was, the continued ability to connect with people and build those rapport. Again, when I moved over here as sales manager, kind of VP of marketing, it was a mature company. I'd been around for 30 years. The owner was a good friend of mine. I had known him for years. He was in his late 60s, looking to transition. His sales force that he had been with the company, all of them 10 and some of them as many as 20 years. So again, it's a group of salespeople who had been there. They were tenured, and things were changing, right? The industry's changing. Everything is changing. So it was just that continued process coming into a new environment. Fortunately, I did have some prior experience in this industry, but really trying to connect with people who have been with the company a long time to build that rapport with them, to get them to a position where they wanted to grow and start doing things a little bit differently.
There you go again, right? Starting all over, building that relationship with your sales team, getting to know each person. You had to start all over again. And I stress that a lot because I think as salespeople, as sales managers, as anybody in an organization, if you want to inspire people, not only your customers, that's important because that's how we make our money, our revenue, but it starts with the relationship building portion. So given today in the environment of the pandemic, coming out of the pandemic, I knew that my sales team, or the sales team that I refer to, they struggled between coming out of the pandemic, before the pandemic and after the pandemic. And what I mean by that is that there was a new norm. A lot of times people say, the salespeople are saying, gee, I'm glad to get back to normal. Well, it's not normal any longer. It's the in-person blending itself into, the virtual selling, the virtual meetings, Zoom or Teams, whatever platform you use. Did you in your sales team have any issues coming out of the pandemic to the new now?
Yeah, I would say probably similar to what, all the bundle sales team struggled with or had a challenge with is, now a lot of our customers are either working at home or not in a position where we can go meet with them face to face. And I think the generation of mine and your age and before, they thrive on connecting with people and doing it face to face. And now we have to do it through a screen, and we have to do it through, distractions when people are on screens and kind of setting a tone for a meeting. So, one of the things that we did is probably very similar to what you did, is we had to get familiar with, Zoom and Google Meetup and all the different platforms and Teams. We actually set up Zoom in our conference room so we could go in there, press a couple buttons and we got a camera going and everything's lit up and ready to go. That was something that I set up. And then also, how do you, plan one of those meetings? What's the process? What do we want to do? How do we run those meetings when you have multiple people, and making sure that we're staying on point? And there's all these audio challenges, right? All those nuances of things. But I think what we're having to do is adjust or pivot. But at the end of the day, it's still similar. We have to build relationships. We have to be able to do that through the screen, through the email, through the phone. Somehow we still have to connect with people and make that a priority. So when, we do have to, pull a deposit out of that bank, it's there for us.
Did you have total buy-in from your salespeople?
Absolutely not. Of course not. They hated it. They're still fighting with it. They just like, come on, man, do I really have to do this? I'm like, we got to figure this out, and then I would make them host a virtual meeting and make them go through the whole process of, okay, you send out the link and then you set up the meeting. And, it was tough, to say the least.
Yeah.
And I was gonna say, there's no, unfortunately, it doesn't appear there is going to be a return to normal. This is a new day that salespeople are living in. There isn't the cold calls where you go knocking on doors. Offices are closed or people aren't in them. They're sitting in their houses. So it's different times.
Yeah, the tooth and nail, people fight it. But I realized one thing after the whole pandemic, and it hasn't ended yet, but once we started coming out of it, humans are very adaptable. And we all adapted very quickly to what was going on with all the changes. Not everybody at first. Some people are early adopters, some aren't. So it takes more time for those people to adopt to the new now. But I think we all have to find our own way through that. And the more information, that's why it's important when we do these podcasts, is that we bring in other people's perspectives. What helped you get through that? What did you do differently? But like you said, training, do it one time, learn how to set up a meeting. But once you're in the meeting, would you agree, whether it's virtual or in person, really isn't a big difference, right?
No, I totally agree. Yeah, it's still connecting, asking questions, being honest, telling the truth, being transparent, all those things are important to build relationships, for sure.
Good. I really enjoy talking to you, Guy. And I got to tell you, you're one of the first early adopters that you kept pressing me, saying, dude, you gotta get beyond something. You got to go and do some podcasting or check into that, or do something different in your sales meetings, because you were there, you were part of that. Sales meetings are great to have a vendor on. They talk about their products, their services, but how do you sell your product? What is it you're doing differently? If you were to tell the audience today one thing that you would suggest for them to do differently that might separate them from their competitors, what would that be? And I'll give you an example real quick. So what you're thinking there is that a lot of times people, when they go into sales meetings or into customers meetings, they want to talk about their products and their services. But sometimes, and most of the time, they're talking about a generalized product. If I don't have that gap, if I don't have a reason to buy that product, then you're really wasting your time. Would you agree?
No, absolutely. Totally agree. And I would say probably one of the biggest things that you can bring to the table as a salesperson is really, I think, putting yourself in that person's position, right? And never focusing on, or I guess trying not to focus on price. You know, everyone wants to talk about price, so they go to price. And I say price is always last. I've always said this, always will. Price is the last thing you should talk about. You should put everything in front of price. And now even more, it's even more and more important. Supply chain is an issue, delays, trucking, all those things are a big deal. I mean, you could have the world's greatest price, but if it can't get there for 3 months, it's worthless, right? So timeliness, you know, how can you deliver quickly? How can you put your product in front of that customer so they can benefit from it? And rarely, like I said, the price is the last thing that we want to talk about. So that's probably one of the biggest things I've always leaned on is selling everything else around it, and then price is last.
Yeah, 100%. And I should have used the example when you and I were in a sales call one time, to your point exactly, is when the price issue came up. It was a breath of fresh air to hear you say something like, oh, I understand price is very important to you, Madam Customer. Tell me more about how that affects your business, the product you're buying. And after the customer looked at you and said, wow, I could see them thinking, or her thinking that, wow, no one's ever asked me that question. When you dig deeper on that price issue, we found out that it wasn't really so much price she was worried about. She wanted quality because she was using so many gloves, cheap gloves on her production floor, that if she was just to pay a little bit more for a glove, a better glove, she would have better usage out of that glove, would lasted her longer, reducing her glove costs. So to your point again, is that we get stuck on price. You know, if you start with price, you die on price.
And that's a great point. I remember that meeting, and I think it was that food handler, that one glove, or I can't remember the exact name, where they would dispense one at a time. And that is a perfect example, because that glove isn't based on price. If you compare the price per glove, you will lose every time. But if you focus on the amount of time it takes the person to pull the glove out and put the glove on, and the amount of waste that was happening in a production atmosphere where it was quick, and every time they went in and out or changed from their shifts or on break, they had to put on a new set of gloves. If you look at the amount of time that they were wasting and the amount of product, because they couldn't touch just one glove, they were pulling out 2 and 3 gloves, and gloves were falling on the ground and people were putting them in their pocket. That was the perfect example, because if you led with price on that, you would fail. But if you focused on the overall cost of the program and how much time they would save and how much product they would save, you were going to win on that one for sure. I love that product. That was one of the products that was newer that came on board when I was at Bunzel.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. Well, we covered a lot of ground in 20, 30 minutes here. So fantastic. I want to end and kind of summarize, but go into what I like to call the lightning round with you, if you're ready for that.
The lightning round. All right, man.
You ready?
Sure.
Cat or dog?
Definitely dog.
I knew that was the answer. Coffee or tea?
Definitely coffee.
Yep, there you go. Last song you had on your repeat?
I would have to say I love the band called the Foo Fighters, and there is a song called In Your Honor.
In Your Honor. Any hidden meaning behind that, or what?
It's just a great song about the guy that the lead singer Dave Grohl talks about why he loves to perform. It's an honor for him to get on stage and get paid. He's one of those guys who came from nothing. He was part of Nirvana back in the day. Now he's a multimillionaire, but for him to be able to get up there, it's in the honor of the crowd that he's happy to be there performing. It's pretty cool.
Good. No miss morning ritual.
No miss morning ritual. You know, for me, it's kind of interesting. I'm a morning guy. I have 4 kids. So if I don't do something in the morning, more than likely it's not going to get done. So for me, I like to get up early when it's quiet. I either try and work out. I have a gym set up in my garage, thanks to COVID. And so either work out or I'll maybe take a half hour to an hour and like read a book or journal, something like that.
Good. That was my next question. What one book should we read?
Ah, man, I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks. I would say the book that I'm reading right now is the story of Elon Musk, which is super interesting. And all that dude went through to get to where he is today. He almost went broke multiple times, and I looked up his net worth, and now he's worth $241 billion. But I would say probably the one book, and I recently reread this one. It's called Good to Great by Jim Collins. It's an old school book, but everything in there still holds true today. You know, it talks about the hedgehog concept, and you got to be really good at one thing. Talks about having a great leader, what a great leader looks like. And I think Bunzl has some of those guys. You know, Bunzl's a blue collar type of company where guys, you know, they don't mind getting dirty, going out in the warehouse and doing inventory and things like that. So it's kind of really focuses on some of the great leaders out there in business and why they're successful. And I think Bunzl has some of those on their team.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. And what about favorite quote or saying?
You know, for me, I don't really, I have a lot of quotes in my head, but one of the ones that I have, and actually have it on my phone right here. Let me pull it up if I can. It's the quote of never give up. I don't know if you could see that.
You see it perfectly. Never give up. I love that.
Never give up. I mean, for me, it was just one of those quotes. I had a good friend of mine that lived in my neighborhood. She unfortunately got cancer. She was a school teacher. Her and I started an annual turkey bowl where we've got all the neighborhood kids. It's been 11 years since we started that turkey bowl, but she helped me start that. And she unfortunately lost her battle with cancer, but she was such a fighter. She tattooed it on the back of her neck. And then when you walked into her house, she had it painted on her wall. And that's what she instilled in her kids. And her son now is a senior in high school. One of the great basketball players in our area. So just having that attitude of no matter what comes at you in life, you just never give up. You just keep going.
And I know you live that because you're one of the guys that never give up. That's what I really enjoy about you, man. I love that about you. One last question, Guy. I love that. You will learn more from failure than you do from successes, in my opinion. What was one of your favorite failures?
You know,
isn't that weird? Favorite?
Yeah. You know, it's kind of funny because if you're failing, and I try and tell this to my kids, that there's opportunity to win, right? You can't just expect to win. You got to fail first. You know, one of in my sales career that I think of, I remember digging in a trash can in Woodland, California, when I started back into sales, and I was selling corrugated boxes at the time, and I got a box sample out of a garbage can in Woodland at a place called Turkey Jerky, threw it in my car, and I made probably no less than 40 calls on this client. And it was a big account, big opportunity, but I just kept going back. And the lady kept telling me, no, he's not here. He's out of the country. The guy you got to talk to. And eventually that guy called me and he says, man, what in the heck do you want from me? And I said, I want to sell you packaging material. And he says, well, get over here. From that multiple failures, I ended up turning that into a multi-million-dollar account. It ended up becoming my biggest account. The guy became one of my best friends. He was actually at my wedding. It's just one of those things. I failed so many times just calling that guy. He would hang up on me, or his secretary would tell me to stop coming to his office. And I just kept going. And eventually it all worked out, and it was a huge success.
There you go. Never give up, right?
Oh, yeah. That was before I even had that saying, but yeah.
Good for you. Guy Fashano at gmail.com. And you do work for MSI. So I would ask our audience if they need anything in the way of labels or any type of information from you, reach out to Guy Fashano at gmail.com. Thank you very much for being my very first guest on the Bunzl Sales Nation. You know, again, who else better to ask than the founder of that whole terminology? I will want to have you back in the future because there's a topic I want to talk about. And it's called the why. And you and I are both Simon Sinek's fans. And he's one of the inspirations to me, as well as you are to me too. So Guy, thank you very much for today. I appreciate it. And again, to the audience, guyfashano.gmail.com. If I got that right.
Yeah, absolutely. Reach out to me. You need anything I can do for anyone, you can call me, email me, text me. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can message me there. Just my first name, last name. So appreciate it, Pat. Really appreciate the opportunity. Love to hear that the Bunzel Sales Nation is still going strong, man. Appreciate you carrying the torch.
All right, buddy. Thank you very much. Good hearing from you.
Hey, have a great day.
You too.